I recently did a video about 5 things I hate about comics and how to fix them. And by the way, thank you for all the people who chimed in on with their things. I thought that was really awesome conversation. I'm going to do another video where I just go through each comment because I think that conversation is pretty awesome. And I really, really appreciate how so many of the people who commented didn't just write, kind of like I tried to do in the video, not just what they hated, but how they'd fix it. And I think that's pretty incredible. And I hope a lot of people who think that folks are too negative about comics every now and then take note that in a lot of cases people aren't just complaining; they're offering suggestions, and I think that's awesome. But I wanted to go the other direction this time and talk about 5 things I love about comics and how those things get threatened. So let's turn it on its head and do it the other way. Hey everybody, this is Perch. My perspective, certainly if you've been listening to any given length of time, I think I wear my kind of thoughts, emotions, feelings on my sleeve, so you kind of know where I'm coming from. But this video is about 5 things I love about comics, and there's a lot to love about comics, by the way. I mean, no one in their right mind would put up with it for decades if they didn't love comics at some level. And even though there are things that certainly frustrate me that I wish were different, and that I wish we could change about the industry, ASAP. There's a lot to love about comics. So here, number one thing I absolutely love about comics, it's an ongoing story. And this is why some people have asked, why is it that so many wrestling fans are also comic book fans? Well, it's because people like the ongoing story. Nobody likes to use this analogy, but it's similar to soap operas in a sense of it's a sense you get to jump in on these characters, you get to jump on this story, and you don't have to worry about it getting canceled. At the broader sense, by the way, the titles get canceled all the time, but the ongoing story of Superman, there's just so much to consume. And it's kind of like how people often feel about wrestling and what the WWE is trying to tap into with their streaming service and everything else, is that if you like this wrestler, you like this match, you can just keep going backward for decades and just get more and more and more, and there's no end to content. When I was younger, one of the things that would frustrate me about movies, like Star Wars, for example, is that there wasn't enough of it. I watched episode 4, 5, and 6, and then like, when am I going to get 7, 8, and 9? When am I going to get 1, 2, and 3? When is this ever going to happen? Am I going to have to wait 20 years to get these movies? Turns out I did. That's the kind of stuff where with comics, there's always new material out there, and there's just so much. It's a living story, and I think that's really, really awesome. The thing I love about comics absolutely is that these stories can be huge and world spanning, and they can go on forever. And if you look back, I mean, there's some runs like some of the Simonson run on Thor that was just epic and went on. I mean, forever. And I think that's really cool. It's, by the way, one reason why you look at titles like Saga, which is very, very popular. Well, one of the things that I think Saga has going for it is it feels like a big, expansive story. It doesn't feel like it's going to go away next week. It doesn't feel like this is a temporary, season of Westworld or Game of Thrones. It's going to keep going. And that's pretty incredible. I realize I'm saying this while the title's on indefinite hiatus, but it is what it is. But I love that. So what's the threat to that? Well, this is one area where I hear people complaining like, hey, the fans have to let go of the past, and we just need to stop caring about, seeing the adventures of Steve Rogers. Isn't it time that Steve Rogers should pass the torch? Isn't it time that a lot of these old white characters could get replaced by something new and exciting? And while I'm very much interested in new storytelling, in fact, that's going to be number 2 in just a moment. I also think that at times comics seems very casual about just discarding some of this legacy. And that's the threat. I think this legacy is super valuable. It is the thing I love most about comics. And so I don't like it when we discard that legacy, when we say, well, I know this has been going on for 30, 40 years and there's all these stories, but hey, nobody likes, this is a dated concept. It's like the video with the Punisher I did. It's like, the Punisher doesn't really fit in today's society, so screw it. Let's just stop writing him and kill him off or replace him radically in some way. And that's the kind of stuff you can give away that victory. But like I said, the number 2 thing that I love about comics is that there are so many different types of stories and characters, and the options and abilities. The entry to create something brand new is super small. Miles Morales is a bigger thing right now with the video game, and you had the Spider-Verse movie and everything else. But when Bendis basically killed off Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe and brought in Miles Morales, it was not a multi-billion-dollar decision. It wasn't something that had to be cleared through a million hoops. If Miles Morales didn't work out, it would have been relatively simple to find a way to pluck Peter Parker back in time and have him come back. So there was not a huge worry that they'd forever be wrecking everything if they tried this new thing out. And I realize that anyway, you may say this is kind of in conflict with what you said in number one. No, not really. I think that these stories can continue on, and I think there's plenty of room to make new stories. By the way, it's one of the reasons why when I've had this argument with people, I don't think that it makes sense to try and retcon, meaning go by and really change a character to fit something in order to appeal to a new demographic, when frankly, it's very easy to just make a new comic. I give you this example, and I mentioned this to somebody else recently. Iceman, they wanted to turn basically reveal that Iceman was a gay character. And they set it up, and there was a story, there's a lot of backlash, and then there was a response to the backlash, and then they had to go and fix it to make the older Bobby gay as well. And then they did a solo title. They went through all these kind of jumping through hoops to get them there. Would it have been impossible to have a clever story where they introduce a brand new character into the X-Men who is gay from the beginning, without any of that baggage, without any of that controversy? And you're writing the stories. You can have this character basically save all of the X-Men lives. You can have this person be the super giant hero that protects them against some major threat. You can have this person become best friends with Wolverine, or whatever you want to do to promote them. And I think that it would be very easy to do that. And I guess that's my point. I love that comic books, whether they're on the independent cycle or on the big publisher cycle, you can very easily create new characters, do new things. Which is why the threat there is that people get intimidated by creating new characters and instead just keep fiddling with the old ones. And I think it's better to let the old ones be, to keep writing their stories, or if truly they're not selling, bring in some new characters. But this constant realignment, readjustment, I think it devalues things, and it takes away a huge strength that comics has, and one that I love, that there is enough room for everyone and everything. Number three thing I love about comics, I love that there is such diverse art styles. So I was a big fan of Michael Mignola, Art Adams. You can certainly see it in some of the things I draw. All the way up. I mean, John Romita Jr. back when he was doing the X-Men, Paul Smith, John Byrne, of course, George Perez. There's just so many amazing, amazing artists out there. To today, you have Greg Capullo knocking out of the park. You've got Ryan Stegman over on Venom doing some amazing work. You've got all kinds of different things. I mean, Mobius back in the day doing his Silver Surfer, to me, is still the definitive Silver Surfer, the one that I think is the best rendition of all of them. I think there's some amazing. Oh, Mike Zeck. I mean, Mike Zeck's Punisher was iconic. Steve Dillon's Punisher was also iconic. Completely different styles, and yet it both worked. So I love the fact that I can pick up lots of different comics, get lots of different art styles. And the threat to it is kind of what we saw a little bit in the 90s, where it became this almost insistence that you had to draw a certain way. And that, the one art style, and you saw everybody kind of copying the Rob Liefeld, the extreme type art style. You saw this big rush of people trying to kind of mimic that. And that's the threat, is that people kind of give away that strength because one artist is popular, and so editors decide to try and solicit and encourage everybody to have that art style. I think that's pretty small chance of danger there, but it's definitely one where we should keep our eyes open on it, because I think there's a lot of value in comics as they are today, and that's not something we need to change. Number four, I like that comics. I like that and this is kind of a mixed one. I like that sometimes we have the freedom to get one and done stories. We get a run of stories of an arc, and we can get graphic novels. And there's a lot of different ways to tell a story. I like that you don't have to conform to a 6-issue block of 22-page comics, that you can actually have a lot of difference in storytelling. And I think that benefits comics, because some stories are not 6-issue arcs. Some are 1 issue. Some are 30. And I think comics, more than almost any other medium, has the ability, when it's used, that's kind of the threat to it, when it's used to tell the story just the way it ought to be told, with enough space, with enough breathing room. The risk to it is what we've seen kind of in the last 10 years with a lot of decompression and a lot of kind of forceful stretching out of a story that doesn't need to be stretched out. There's a lot of comics out there that, can be done in 2 issues or 3 issues and don't need to be 12. But there's this decompressed style of storytelling that really kind of hurts the story. It makes it feel like it's more mechanical rather than organic. We're not telling a story; we're just kind of checking boxes, and I think that's a big negative. The fifth item is kind of a strange one, I suspect that many, and that's that by and large, with a few exceptions, it's such a passionate field. The fans are passionate, the creators are passionate, that if you can get people away from Twitter and get people away from kind of the crazy aspect, you could get some really amazing friendships and conversations and everything else. I have had, hands down, some of the best conversations over the last year since I started this channel, both with interviews. I mean, you heard the conversation I had with Sean Gordon Murphy and Brett Booth and Brian Edward Hill, Larry King, Narwhal. There's been a bunch of interviews that I've done that have been really good conversations. I mean, forget the rest of it. I'm recording an interview for you guys to listen to, but I'm enjoying myself. I'm having a great time just having good conversation. And there's been a bunch of conversations I've had with people outside of comics, where I wasn't not inside comics, but not recording anything, where we just wanted to do something off the record, just have a good talk. And there's been a number of creators, so I've had just very, very good interactions. People that get beat up a lot on social media on both sides, that when you get rid of that kind of baggage and that nonsense, they open up and they're interested in ideas, and they're very creative people, and they want to talk about the minutia and the details and the where comics can go. I think that there's way too much noise right now about toxic fandom and the negatives of people who are too in. And I saw some article like, this is what happens when you get fans that are too into comics or too into movies. And I gotta say, that's a terrible way of thinking about it. You shouldn't be saying, oh, these people are too into comics. There's no such thing as being too into comics. We should all be too into comics. We should love the fact that there's so much passion, so much energy, and the second you start looking at that as a negative, as something to be alarmed by, or to try and destroy, or try and we got to keep these people calm. We can't get them too excited. That's a terrible thing. And I think, to me, the spirit and engagement and excitement of the fan base, it's worth occasional blow-ups, or even not occasional blow-ups, and people acting out in order to have this level of people who care so much about this hobby. I think that's an awesome thing I love about it. Anyway, those are my 5 things I love about comics, where I see there are risks to them. Would love to know yours. What are your 5 things that you absolutely love about comics that get you up in the morning and keep you in this hobby, even when sometimes it's hard, even when the comics are too expensive, when somebody's being an ass, or whatever it happens to be? What are the things that keeps you engaged because you just love it so much? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter or Facebook at Comic Perch, and thanks for listening. And thanks for reading.